There's an underrated reason why some of us collect certain toys. It's not always just nostalgia. Sometimes we're not just buying the toys we remember, we're buying the toys we couldn't have. The ones we only saw on store shelves. The ones we stared at as kids, knowing deep down they probably weren't coming home with us. Welcome to Agimat Collects. Let's unbox today's topic. I think a lot of collectors get started because of nostalgia, and that makes sense. A certain toy line reminds us of Saturday mornings, cartoons, old commercials, trips to the store, a simpler time. But I think there's another side of nostalgia that doesn't get talked about as much. And that's the feeling of finally being able to afford the things your younger self could only admire from a distance. For me, G.I. Joe Classified is a mix of both. There's definitely nostalgia there. I remember the idea of G.I. Joe. The soldiers, the characters, the imagination behind it. But I didn't grow up with massive collection of G.I. Joe. I didn't have all the vehicles. I didn't have the big playsets, and I especially didn't have the kind of collection I probably imagined having as a kid. A lot of that was simply because we couldn't afford it. And that's not something I say with bitterness. That's just reality. My parents did what they could, and because of that, I learned how to make do with what we had. So instead of having a full squad of official G.I. Joe figures, I had little army men. And in my imagination, those little green army men were my G.I. Joes. They each had their names, their missions, they had their battles and stories. Because as kids, we didn't always need the official version to have fun. We just needed something to hold, and enough imagination to fill in the rest. And every now and then, when there was enough money to spare, I might get an actual figure. And because that didn't happen all the time, that figure felt special. And that's why G.I. Joe Classified means something different to me now. It's not just about building a shelf or completing a line. Part of it is looking at these figures now and thinking, man, the kid in me would have loved this. And I think that's one of the quietest but most powerful reasons we collect. We're not always trying to relive the past. Sometimes we're giving the past a version of joy it didn't get to fully experience. And that's how I feel about Spawn figures too. I remember going to the city in the Philippines when I was younger, and some of the coolest figures I would see back then were the McFarlane Spawn figures. They just looked different. The detail, the sculpt, the presence. Even if you didn't know the full story behind the character, those figures looked like something from another world. They didn't look like regular toys. They looked like art pieces. They looked serious, dark, and heavy. But I never owned a single one. I just admired them from the display shelves, and that memory stayed with me. So now, when I go to a local toy store and I see an older Spawn figure still in good condition and still inside the original boxes, there's just something special about it. And not because I'm trying to become a Spawn completionist or trying to buy every single old McFarlane figure, but because sometimes it feels like I'm buying it for the kid version of me. The kid who could only look at those figures through the glass. And I think that's why certain purchases feel different. Some toys are just fun pickups, cool designs, and some are just because the community is talking so much about them. But then there are those toys that hit something deeper. Not in a sad way, but in a very human way. Because when you grew up, not being able to have certain things, finally being able to choose them for yourself can feel meaningful. It's not about flexing or proving that you've made it. And it's not about filling empty holes with plastic. At least for me, that's not how I see it. It's more like a quiet moment of gratitude. And there's another side to this topic. Just because we couldn't have certain things as kids doesn't mean we have to buy everything now. That's where this can get tricky. Sometimes the inner child says we couldn't have it before, so we deserve it now. And honestly, I understand that feeling. But as adults, we still have to collect responsibly. Because healing that childhood excitement doesn't mean repeating impulse after impulse. Doesn't mean buying every toy we missed or chasing every version of the childhood we didn't have. It just means appreciating that we made it to a point where we can choose. We can buy one figure that means something. We can bring home a piece of that feeling without letting it take over our lives. And that's why I think collecting can be so personal. From the outside, people might just see shelves. But for some collectors, certain figures carry stories. They carry memories. For me, G.I. Joe Classified reminds me of making do with the little army man and using imagination to fill the gap. Spawn Figures reminds me of staring at the display shelves, amazed by figures I never thought I'd own. And maybe part of collecting is not just about who we are now, but also honoring the kid we used to be. The kid who imagined more than he had. And maybe the goal isn't to give that kid everything, is to just remind him, we're okay now, and we still know how to play. And I think this is also why I try not to judge what certain toys mean to other collectors. Because for some people, it's nostalgia. For some, it's finally being able to afford what they couldn't have as kids. And for others, it might be something even deeper. Maybe collecting helped them get through a hard season. Maybe it gave them something positive to look forward to. Maybe it became a healthier escape during a time when life felt heavy. And that's why we have to be careful with how we talk about other people's collections. Because from the outside, it's easy to judge someone, but we don't always know the story behind it. We don't know what that collection helped someone survive. We don't know what kind of joy it brought back to their life. And we don't know if the thing we're making fun of is the same thing that's quietly helping them stay okay. So for next week, I want to talk about that a little more. Not from a place of enabling unhealthy habits, but from a place of compassion. Because before we judge someone how they collect, maybe we should ask them, are you okay? Thank you all for listening. That's all for now. And as always, collect responsibly.